It's been a few months now, but what's really going on with these pyramid scans? Because if even part of what's been claimed turns out to be true, this might be the most paradigm-shifting discovery ever made. So what do we actually know? What comes next, and could we be on the brink of rewriting history? Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Michael. I have a degree in ancient history, and on this channel, we discuss the unexplainable mysteries of our past. Let's get into it. You've probably seen the headlines: Mystery New City Beneath the Pyramids, or Massive Underground Structures Found Beneath Giza. It sounds like clickbait, but these articles came from real research, which claims something extraordinary. A mind-bending discovery from under the pyramid of Khafre, the second largest of the Giza pyramids. Now I'm going to discuss the veracity of these claims in a minute, plus what the future of this work looks like. But first let's talk about what was actually announced. The research comes from Italian scientists Filippo Biondi and Corrado Malanga. Their findings, presented in 2025, were dramatic. They announced that beneath Khafre's pyramid, they had detected 8 massive vertical structures, described as pillars or shafts, extending some 600 meters deep into the earth. But the team didn't stop at pillars. In their rollout, they rattled off specifics: 5 relieving chambers stacked one above another, 8 columns each with spiral staircases, and 4 huge square platforms, where the columns supposedly terminate. They even claim to have scanned a footprint of about 2 kilometers under the plateau. If taken literally, this would make this foundation system the largest supporting structure for any building in history, which is exactly why the bar for evidence is so high. The images released at a press event show colourful tomographic slices with long column-like forms. To the researchers, these didn't look like natural geology. They looked like part of a deliberate design. It sounds wild, but this technology isn't total sci-fi. The same technique has been used successfully on real geological features. In 2022, for instance, Biondi's team imaged magma chambers beneath Mount Vesuvius. The success of this experiment gave them the confidence to try something more ambitious, applying the same method to one of the world's most iconic archaeological sites. Their technique is called SAR Doppler tomography, which is essentially a highly advanced form of satellite radar imaging. Satellites send radar pulses down toward Earth. When those waves bounce back, they can reveal not just the surface, but also subtle vibrations underground. By compiling many passes and analysing the changes in the radar's phase, researchers can apparently construct 3D images of what lies beneath. But the story didn't stop there. In interviews and press releases, the team suggested these features might form the foundations of a hidden underground complex. One member of the team even called it a potential underground city, a network of shafts, passages, and chamber-like voids, perhaps that could have served structural or ritual purposes. Some even speculated about connections to Egyptian myths, the Hall of Records, legendary underground libraries, or the underworld river Herodotus once described. The imagery went viral. Dramatic animations showing glowing tunnels stretching under the desert. Articles amplified the underground city idea, and suddenly, people around the world were asking, have we finally discovered Giza's greatest secret? That's the claim, but as you'd expect, not everyone was convinced. Whenever new claims emerge about the pyramids, one name is never far away: Zahi Hawass. Egypt's former Minister of Antiquities has been the global face of Egyptology for decades. He's escorted presidents around the plateau, he's fronted documentaries, and he's long positioned himself as the guardian of Egypt's archaeological narrative. So when talk of hidden pillars and underground cities hit the news, Hawass came out swinging. He dismissed the findings outright, calling them completely unfounded. In his words, all this information is completely wrong and has no scientific basis. This is false, he said. The details they announced could not have been detected using such methods. For Hawass, the pyramids are already understood. Tombs and temples built by the Egyptians of the 4th dynasty. Nothing more, nothing less. So, who do we believe? Zahi or our Italian scientists? You know, when I'm researching these videos, I run into the same problems over and over. Information overload, clickbait headlines, and honestly, not even knowing what to trust anymore. It's tough, but that's exactly why I use today's sponsor, Ground News, a news comparison platform that helps me cut through the noise and see the whole picture. Take this story about these discoveries beneath the Giza pyramids. I get coverage details. Instantly I can see how many outlets are covering the story, all in one place. I can compare headlines. Ground News lets you put headlines from left-leaning, center, and right-leaning left-leaning sources side by side, and the difference is huge. Some outlets frame it as a breakthrough in archaeology, others frame it as fake news. Same story, completely different spin. And there's the blind spot feature, one of my favourites. It shows me which stories are being covered disproportionately, and the Giza discoveries barely show up on the left-leaning outlets. This is why I keep ground news in my toolkit. It lets me make up my own mind, which honestly is invaluable when researching history and archaeology. So if you want to do the same, subscribe today and get 40% off the Unlimited Vantage plan. Just scan the QR code on screen or go to ground.news/button. The link is in my description. Now back to the video. Hawass isn't shy about framing alternative claims in the harshest possible terms. He's called similar ideas pseudo-archaeology and often characterizes those behind them as frauds, fantasists, or opportunists trying to undermine Egypt's heritage. Now, Hawass's influence matters, because for the media and for many in the academic world, his verdict often sets the tone. If he says there's nothing there, then that quickly becomes the headline. But he wasn't the only one. Other experts also raised eyebrows. Geophysicist Lawrence Conyers, a pioneer in archaeological ground-penetrating radar, called the underground city idea a huge exaggeration. In his view, the technique simply cannot image that deep with the necessary resolution. Most radar in archaeology struggles beyond tens of meters, let alone hundreds. Physicist Sabine Hossenfelder went further, dedicating an entire video to debunking the claim. She scored it a 9 out of 10 on the bullshit meter, pointing out that there's no plausible source of micro vibrations to generate clear signals at such depths. To her, the images look nothing more than noise in the data. Even many in the alternative history space push back. One common objection was that much of this alleged network would lie below the water table. If so, how could it ever have functioned? Others pointed out that if the claims are literal, we'd be talking about the largest engineered foundation in world history, which isn't impossible but does demand extraordinary evidence. So almost immediately, the pushback became intense. Egypt's leading archaeologists dismissing the claims, geophysicists saying the technology can't possibly work that way, and science communicators tearing into the story online. Which brings us to the heart of the matter. How can we possibly make sense of all this? First, let's be clear. SAR tomography is a real scientific technique. Biondi and Malanga are not random nutters. They're researchers who've published peer-reviewed work, including a 2022 paper in remote sensing that successfully used this method to detect known chambers inside Khufu's Great Pyramid. That's important. They're not claiming magic, they're applying a novel but legitimate technique. Additionally, skeptics often based their critiques on the early, blurry images the team released. Now, it's true those first pictures were indeed underwhelming, but later, in March 2025, the team shared a clearer, more refined image, showing distinct vertical structures that look far more convincing. Many critics ignored this updated figure entirely, focusing only on the weaker evidence to make their case. That's not rigorous skepticism, that's cherry-picking. Supporters also highlight that the team claims to have validated the approach by scanning the Gran Sasso Physics Lab in Italy, which is 1.4 kilometers underground. But to be fair, that's a claim in a presentation, not a peer-reviewed demonstration. Until the full workflow is published, it's marketing, not proof. And there's the key problem. The Khafre results have not yet been peer-reviewed or published. What we've seen so far are press conference images and a press release, not the detailed methodology or raw data that other scientists can scrutinize. Without that transparency, it's impossible to know whether the vertical pillars in their images are genuine signals or just artifacts of the processing. The team also leaned on proprietary AI software to sharpen and interpret the images. They even described training the system on medical scans to enhance structure detection. Now that's powerful for demos, but from a science perspective, it's a black box. Without peer review, we can't tell where the signal ends and the algorithm's imagination begins. Another important context is geology. The Giza Plateau is limestone bedrock. It's not known for vast natural vertical shafts hundreds of meters deep. That makes the discovery of pillars, quote unquote, either profoundly important or profoundly suspicious. If real, they'd represent a level of underground engineering far beyond what we associate with the Old Kingdom or any ancient civilization, by far. If false, they might be nothing more than quirks in the radar data. But here's a trap that many fall into. It is anti-science to reflectively dismiss anything extraordinary like this. Hawass and others categorically deny the possibility before even examining the methodology. But dismissing the findings outright is antithetical to the spirit of science. The correct approach is cautious openness. Don't accept extraordinary claims without extraordinary evidence, but don't slam the door shut before that evidence has even been presented. So where does all that leave us? Well, somewhere in the middle. The researcher's method is innovative and deserves to be tested, but until the work is peer-reviewed, replicated, and corroborated by other techniques, the claims remain unproven. For now, the idea is best treated as a hypothesis, in need of verification. Not a discovery, but not nonsense either. So what comes next? The researchers say a comprehensive peer-reviewed paper will be published later this year. That will be the make or break moment. If the paper provides detailed methodology, error analysis, and shows consistent results, it could give the claims real scientific credibility. If not, the skeptics will be vindicated. So replication is the next step. Because the satellites they used gather open data, other remote sensing specialists could, in theory, run their own analyses on the same raw inputs. If independent teams also find anomalies under Khafre's pyramid, then the conversation will shift dramatically. But if they don't, then the pillars might well be a mirage. Ultimately, of course, nothing would settle the question like direct exploration. That's the hard part. Excavating beneath the pyramids requires permission from Egypt's antiquities authorities. And with Hawass so vocally opposed, that seems unlikely anytime soon. But public fascination with this story is growing. You think surely, in this day and age, someone will somehow, eventually, properly explore beneath the Giza plateau. More realistically, in the short term, it's non-invasive methods that may be used next. More muon tomography, advanced GPR, or refined SAR processing. If multiple independent techniques all point to the same anomalies, well, then pressure will mount to investigate further. In the meantime, the researchers themselves will likely continue scanning other monuments. If they can show similar anomalies under Khufu or Menkare's pyramid, or even under the Sphinx, that could definitely strengthen their case, or on the other hand, reveal patterns that make geological sense. So the future hinges on transparency, replication, and perhaps one day, permission to dig. But finally, let's ask the big question, the one we all want to dream about. What if it's true? What if, against the odds, there really are vast structures beneath Khafre's pyramid? The implications of that would be staggering. First, it would completely rewrite our understanding of Egyptian engineering. We already marvel at the precision of the pyramids, but if beneath them lay deep pillars or labyrinths, it would suggest a mastery of subterranean architecture completely beyond anything we've credited to the Old Kingdom. The pyramids might not just be monuments rising above the desert, they could also be monuments plunging deep below it. Second, it would breathe life into ancient legends. Herodotus wrote of Khufu being buried in a subterranean chamber surrounded by water. Later myths spoke of hidden halls, underworld rivers, even the legendary Hall of Records, said to contain the knowledge of the gods. Egyptologists usually dismiss these stories as metaphor or invention, but if real chambers were discovered, how would we read those myths then? Perhaps they were echoes of a memory we've long overlooked. Third, the find would raise thrilling new questions. Why build so much beneath the surface? Was it functional, foundations, water control, energy generation, earthquake protection? Or was it spiritual, a vast underworld mirroring the heavens above? Even if the reality turned out to be less dramatic than huge columns and an underground city, it would still be world-changing. Remember, Giza already has real shallow tunnels like the Osiris shaft near Khafre's causeway. These are understudied, sometimes waterlogged, and still not fully mapped. Even if the mega-depth pillars vanish under scrutiny, a renewed focus on Giza's subterranean features could still yield big discoveries. Suppose the pillars were ancient geological features that the Egyptians deliberately built over. That alone would tell us the builders chose Giza not just for its location, but for what lay beneath. Suppose the structures were shallower than claimed, more like deep vaults or shafts. That would still represent an engineering achievement unlike anything else of the period. But the likelier scenario, a partial truth. Maybe the radar really did detect something, but AI and processing noise exaggerated it into staircases and platforms. Even that outcome, uncovering shallower galleries or fissures beneath the pyramid, would still be a revelation. Of course, there's always the chance the anomalies turn out to be nothing at all, misreadings of noisy data. If so, the mystery of Giza continues much as it has for millennia, endlessly fascinating but refusing to give up its ultimate secrets. And maybe that's the real point. Whether or not there's a hidden labyrinth, the pyramids still hold our imagination captive. They sit at the intersection of science, myth, and mystery. Because even in 2025, even after centuries of study, we still cannot explain them. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like or subscribing to my channel. See you next time.